She was just upstairs. She must have been down the wrong stairwell.
After that, we had to jump out the windows. Assistance from the fire department.
Bag for the computer.
All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please note those in attendance?
Will be noted.
Thank you. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on to approval of the minutes. I trust everyone's had a chance to review the minutes. If so, I'd entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. One abstention. Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Moving on to adoption of the agenda. I understand we have a couple of things to move around. We're adding item 4K, special event application for Main Street Incorporated. And we're going to move current item 4H, resolution authorizing support for an application of Ramsey County Critical Quarter Grant funding from White Bear Lake Lochner LLC to 8C, new business. Are there any other corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have an agenda. Moving on to item 4, consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is adopted. Item 5, visitors and presentations. I understand we have swearing in for our new police officers. Chief, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Thanks for allowing us an opportunity to introduce our 2 newest officers with you and host their swearing-in ceremony at your meeting. I know that you're probably anxious to be done because it's a holiday week, so thank you for having us. So it's been a really busy year of recruiting, hiring, and training for the police department, as you keep hearing that through the updates. But the end result for us has been awesome because we have 2 great new police officers sitting here in the audience. And before we have them take their oath of office, I just want to give you a little bit of background on each of them because you haven't met all of them yet, and sometimes it's the first time that you get to see them, and then maybe the last for a while based on the hours that they're working. So first we have Officer Pamvalai Sorensen, and Pamvalai started her police officer career with the department on September 26th, but she's not a new face to the department. She's been doing a great job through her training and is about halfway through field training, and she's moving along very well. I'm sure at times it's really slow for her, but the next several weeks will move on pretty quickly and fly by, and she'll be on her own before you know it. So she, if you're not familiar, our field training process, they go through the hiring process. She started that, I think, in about June, but we had to wait for her to finish school to be eligible, and then the field training process is about 16 weeks long. They go through 4 different phases. So when I say that it drags on, I'm sure it's felt like forever for her. So Pamvalai, like I said, is not a new face to the department. She first met our police officers while she was working for Chick-fil-A in college. At that point, she had started to pursue education in law enforcement, and cops like Chick-fil-A. And so when they would come in for dinner, she would ask them questions about the profession, about the department, and at the time she was at Century College. So those officers, who some of them are here, convinced her to join the White Bear Lake Police Reserves, and she began her time with the city as a reserve in June of 2021. That lasted for a couple of months, and then in February, we hired her on as a CSO, but through her time as a CSO, she was still a reserve, and she had volunteered over 200 hours to our reserve unit, which is great. As you know, we rely heavily on our reserves. So in February, she was hired on as a community service officer, where she continued to work until she was hired in September as a police officer. She's a graduate of Tartan High School and Century College, and her greatest thing to do outside of work, she tells us, is to enjoy time with family and friends when she's not working. So next we have Officer Will Fink, and he began his police officer career with us on October 31st. Ironically, he replaced an officer that left in May, and that officer had also started on Halloween about 12 years ago, so it's kind of ironic that they both started on the same day. Will comes with past experience as a police officer and has also been moving through training very quickly as a result. He's originally from Forest Lake, but attended school at St. Cloud State and then later at Alexandria Tech, where he completed his associate's degree in law enforcement. After college, Will worked briefly as a detention deputy in Hennepin County and then began his law enforcement career in the city of Hibbing. So he served as a police officer in Hibbing for almost 2 years, and although he really enjoyed that job and the department, and they very much enjoyed him, he decided to return back to the metro area to be near family and friends, and that was the greatest thing that could happen for us because it's worked out very well. So in his short time in White Bear Lake, he's fit in really well and made a lot of friends, and I'm sure he's going to be missed by his coworkers because, as I said, they said he was a great addition to their department. There's an awful lot of that going on, and we'd rather be on the receiving end than the giving end at that point. In addition to working as a police officer, Will has served with the Minnesota National Guard since 2014, and he's still serving, and he holds the rank of E5, although I didn't confirm that. Is that accurate? All right. So we're very excited to welcome both of them and support Will and Pamvalai in their careers as police officers, and both of them are joined by family and friends and their White Bear Lake Police Department family here. So with that, we'll have Callie come up and administer the oath of office. So if the two of you could come on up, just the two of you at this point, we'll do the oath of office and then the badge pinning when she's done.
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Minnesota, and will discharge and faithfully execute the duties devolving upon me as a police officer for the city of White Bear Lake, without fear or favor, to the best of my judgment and ability. Congratulations.
Have their respective people come up and pin their badges on at the same time. Will has Connor doing his, and Pamvalai has her dad pinning her badge on. This is the tricky part. You don't want to stick them. It really doesn't go on very well. Congratulations to both of you, and after they're done shaking hands, we're gonna head out for cake and coffee.
Congratulations.
With that, we're gonna head out, so thanks again for having us, and have a good Thanksgiving.
Welcome aboard. We'll give these guys one more round of applause.
Thank you.
Is it my imagination, or are they getting younger? This
It's option C. You're getting old.
You used to be fun.
All right. We'll move on to item 5B, the quarterly Sports Center report. Who's taking this? Wonderful.
Mayor, members of the council, definitely can't follow that well, at least, but I'll try. So in your packet, we have the third quarter quarterly report for the Sports Center. So in July, if I can hit the next slide. In July, the Sports Center was awarded the 2022 Merit Award by AIA Minneapolis for architectural design for our 2018 renovation. So I have the award here, if anyone wants to take a look at it after the meeting. We worked with JLG Architects on that project, so that's a pretty fun thing to receive. The solar panel installation is complete, was completed this past September at the Sports Center. Ice time utilization in hours for July were 243 hours, August was 340 hours, and September was 327 hours. The demand for ice was strong this past quarter. Again, the Hockey Association did purchase weekend ice in addition to weekdays, which is always helpful for us. Usage and rent and revenues are on par with what was budgeted. Our fall session for the city's Learn to Skate program started in September as well. And the hockey training facility continued to be busy with both youth and high school players. We've seen a general increase in revenue for the aerobic room, birthday parties, and concessions. Overall, we have an increase of revenue by about $39,000 year to date for the Sports Center. This weekend we do, or next weekend, we have a skate competition, which will bring over 300 figure skaters to the White Bear Lake area. So that is very helpful for our local economy. And then we have a new advertisement that I have up on the screen. So that is a city advertisement that will be placed on the rink, on the boards. It's a city facility and we didn't have anything. So after a recent tour, I figured we kind of need to do some advertising of ourselves. Overall, the armory usage is still in this report for last quarter. That usage continued to go down last quarter, and the Boatworks Commons usage continued to increase. So with that, I'll stand for any questions and try to answer any of your questions that you have.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Council, any questions? Seeing none. Thank you for the report. All right, moving on to item 8A, resolution awarding the sale of the 2022B general obligation bonds. Ms. Kinsvater.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The City Council authorized the issuance of $6,990,000 in general obligation capital improvement bonds to partially fund the city's public safety facility renovation and expansion project at the November 9th meeting. So since that time, the staff has continued to work with Ellers to prepare for the bond sale this morning. As previously mentioned at the November 9th meeting, S&P Global Ratings did affirm our AA+ bond rating for the current issue and for all outstanding bond issues. So for the bid opening for the bond process this morning, we had a great turnout, very excited. We had 8 investment firms that bid on our bond sale today, which is double what we had last spring. The top 5 bids were really competitive, and the true interest costs for those were within 0.1% difference between those top 5. The lowest bid came from Piper Sandler and Company from Minneapolis. The true interest cost for their bid was 3.7567. This is exciting because the preliminary debt service schedules that Ellers prepared for our planning purposes back in October had taken the market rate at that time for the AA+ rating and then added 75 basis points which is the 0.75%, for a cushion, just as we were to plan for our rate fluctuations. So based on that information, the true interest cost that were in our planning purposes were 4.565. So the 3.7567 is 81 basis points less, which is excellent. So for comparison purposes, as we look for that, at that true interest cost, this is only 0.5% more than what we have for a true interest cost for the issue that we did earlier this year. So given where the market has been and how there were so many changes, that if it's up 0.5%, it's a good day. So the bid included a premium of $340,310, and the city chose to retain that original $6.99 million, or we could reduce the bond issue by that premium to keep the true interest cost at the same. Staff chose to retain the bond sale issue amount of the $6.99 million. This would eliminate the need for a contribution from the Community Reinvestment Fund that was part of our financial plan. Wow. And it potentially can complete, there were 2 project points that were delayed, the monument and the roof replacement, that there's the potential that there would be funds to complete both of those within this first phase of the project. The pre-sale report presented to the City Council in November 9th, estimated the annual tax levy for the bond's life to range between roughly $372,000 and $566,000. Today's bond sale information, when we use that actual true interest cost, the average annual tax levy needed is $17,000 less, so the range will be between $358,000 and $556,000. So it's great to see that savings with that lower interest rate. So with that information, I recommend the City Council adopt the resolution awarding the sale of the general obligation bonds, Series 20, 2022B, in the aggregate principal amount of $6,990,000. I can take any questions that the council may have, and we have Dan Tentner here from Ellers who would also be able to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsvater. So it sounds like the money, the bonds that are going to be used to fund a project that we've already approved is now coming in much better than expected, under budget, and it's all nothing but good things to report. I have that about right?
Yep.
That's great news. Yeah, that's great news. Any questions? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 3. Can I take, or do you want one at a time?
Please do. Go for it.
Thank you. So, Ms. Kinsvater, congratulations. Can you comment for us, getting a AA+ that's big news. That's good stuff. And we've had that for more than a couple of years now. How much does that actually save us? What's the real world contribution of that to, okay, here's a case I'm going to try and make, but you're the expert. Or maybe the gentleman from Mellors is the expert, I don't know. So we invest in good financial management systems. We've got a great person and personnel staff that's doing that work. So we balance our budgets and we pay for things, and so we get good ratings. That contributes to us saving money when we have to go out and borrow money for projects. How much does that extra work, that work that we do, how do we think about translating that into the dollar value that we obtain through lower rates? What's the case you would make on that?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so just to clarify, you're asking for how it translates.
How should we think about the value of having a AA+?
I think that we should be very excited to have the AA+, and the financial planning, the long-term planning that the council does. It helps us with our operations. It helps us be able to continue our programs, to invest in the equipment we need, and to be able to issue the bonds at the lower interest rate. So,
can you put a dollar amount on that?
it would depend on what the interest rate, Dan, do you happen to know how that relates? What the difference is, so what we'd be looking at in the dollar amount is the difference between what someone with a different, what our interest rate would be at if we were at a different level. Correct?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for the question. Before I begin, congratulations on the excellent bond sale today. As far as the consideration of the different cost among the credit ratings, the AA plus is essentially the second highest credit rating, right below a AAA. The additional financial management planning work that you've done, if you look at your credit report, it actually notes the city's thoughtfulness in its financial management planning, as well as its policies and procedures related to its budget compliance and internal controls. Those ultimately translate into a higher credit rating. If we wanted to quantify the amounts, as mentioned by the city manager and the finance director, the spread between ratings will vary at any point in time in the market, but generally you can look at it between about 10 to 12 basis points. So if you would like, we could certainly look at what a AAA versus a AA plus versus a AA would end up being. But ultimately, it does help the city secure lower interest rates, which then reduces the cost of your borrowing by virtue of having lower interest expense, which, as noted by the finance director, then results in a lower property tax levy, generally as the city services the debt over time. So all of that effort, as you mentioned before, with financial management planning translates into that rate, which ultimately translates into lower borrowing costs, which then in turn turns into lower property taxes for the residents and businesses of the city of White Bear Lake.
So without asking for tons of data runs, I'd be curious some point receiving, what would we have paid if had we had only a AA, for example, compared to the AA plus? Or one notch lower than what we have? How much do we save because we are that good? And I don't need that off the top of your head, so you can file that someplace. Second question, though. So, Ms. Kinsvater, you mentioned that we had the option of either continuing to borrow the same amount, which we've elected to do, but because we're doing that and would possibly re-expand the project, I wasn't clear about the implications of that for actual property tax savings or reducing our levy. If we're going to continue borrowing the same amount, what's the difference? Is it simply the interest rate? Is that so we get to do more with the same amount, and it doesn't, and so our levy stays lower than it would have been to do those projects otherwise?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there's a little adjustment to the true interest cost, but what will happen is when we go to, this will be taken into consideration when we do our bond sale this next year. So we'll still be bonding for the same amount, but it will just, that 10 million from next year will be less.
Okay. All right. Got it. Thank you.
All right, very good. Anyone else? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, the resolution passes.
Well, I asked it. No, there's a third one that I asked him about.
Item
There are
8B,
actually
first
four,
reading of an
but I
ordinance
confused everybody.
establishing the 2023 fee schedule. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we have a first reading of the fee schedule ordinance. This will be, we will have a public hearing and a second reading at the December 13th city council meeting prior to the ordinance being adopted and effective for January 1, 2023. So in your staff report and in the packet are highlights of the major changes for, proposed changes, I should say, for 2023. So I'll just briefly highlight them and take questions after. So in ambulance rates, we're looking at a 5% increase to support operations and capital expenditures. At Pioneer Manor, we are looking at a 5% rent increase effective April 2023, and that later start date is due to required renter notifications. The Armory facility rentals, we have deleted those from the fee schedule since we no longer own that property. There are a few different changes for the sports center for ICE rental rates. Those are increasing $10 per hour to be competitive with area rinks. Skating school registration increases $2 per week. an increase in contract and drop-in rates for figure skaters. Skate show participation fees increased $5. And it now includes high school game fees, rink advertising, and concession stand lease fees. All fees that have been charged in the past, but not identified in the fee schedule previously. For the municipal marina, we are recommending that we break out slip rentals in 2023 based on resident and non-resident. So resident slip renters would be charged $2,500 for the season. That's a $0 increase from 2022. And non-residents would be charged $2,800 for the season. Water rates and infrastructure fees. The 2023 fee schedule recommends an increase to both water consumption rate and the infrastructure fee to fund operating and capital expenditures in the water department. So those are outlined. They're a little bit more challenging to explain, so they're outlined in your staff report, and as we discussed at the previous work session going over this. We did also outline for a residential median home value and a commercial property what that billing difference would be from 2022 to 2023. So for the residential median home value, the difference is an increase of $15.29 per quarter. Surface water management fee. Residential and commercial customers began paying $5 quarterly fee in 2021. That fee increased to $7 in 2022 for both resident and commercial customers. That rate structure created in 21 treated residential and commercial customer properties equally and did not acknowledge the impact of commercial properties' impervious surface coverage. That has a significant impact to the stormwater system. So therefore, we have reanalyzed through GIS. We have reanalyzed what a residential equivalent unit would be for every commercial property in White Bear Lake. So our fee schedule for 2023 does recommend holding the residential equivalent unit at $7 per quarter, but commercial entities with an actual resident equivalent unit, or REU, of 1 to 3 will pay $7. Will pay the $7 rate multiplied by their actual REU per quarter. And commercial entities with an actual REU of greater than 3 will pay the $7 rate multiplied by 3. We do recommend increasing the REU limit number each year to allow entities with those higher impervious surface to pay actually what their impact is on the stormwater utility. As discussed in the work session, staff did not feel comfortable ramping that up right away, rather taking a graduated approach to those commercial customers. For refuse and recycling, the fee schedule recommends a rate that incorporates the 2023 vendor per unit collection and hauling contract fee and an 18% increase to the tipping fee portion in order to cover the expenditure increase from contractors. Again, that is a contracted utility. We have some staff costs related to utility billing and customer questions. Otherwise, we do contract completely for that utility. Community development. Applicants for larger projects requiring additional staff time to review have traditionally not been charged an escrow fee. I do recommend we implement an escrow, so the burden of those applications is not placed on the overall taxpayers as a whole, but rather the individual applicant. That's common among cities, and applicants should not be surprised with that new fee. So therefore, staff does recommend adding the following fees in 2023 for the community development section of the fee schedule: a concept plan review, conditional use permit escrow, comprehensive plan amendment escrow, environmental review plus escrow, planned unit development escrow, rezoning escrow, subdivision escrow, traffic or travel demand study plus escrow. And in addition, we do recommend that the commercial electric permit fees be calculated by valuation plus a state surcharge. Again, that is very common among communities. So all of this is outlined in the attached fee schedule. It is in tracked changes. There are a couple of different colors as a few staff members have been working in this. But generally, the underline items are what is added, and the stricken items are what we are proposing for deletion. All of this is in line with what was discussed at the work session. The commercial electric permit fees was not discussed at the work session, and that is in addition to what you have already reviewed, as that was something that was caught later in the game. And that is on the last page of the fee schedule for your review. So this is the first reading of the fee schedule ordinance. I can stand for questions now and any changes that you may suggest that we bring back for the second reading prior to adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Well, we have accomplished our first reading. I'm sure others will have comments at our second reading. But is there anything anyone's just dying to talk about right now? Seeing none. Thank you again, Ms. Crawford. Moving on to item 8C, resolution authorizing support for an application for Ramsey County Critical Corridor grant funding from the WBL Lochner LLC. Mr. Lindahl.
Members of the council. I'll just give you a brief overview of the memo that's before you and then open it up to questions. And to just let you know, excuse me, Peter Orth with Schaefer Richardson is in the audience to also answer questions you may have. So as you mentioned, the item before you here tonight asks the council to approve a resolution supporting a critical corridor grant application from the Schaefer Richardson Development Company related to phase 2 of their development, which is more commonly known as the second Barnum site along County Road E. Recently, Ramsey County opened up a new grant program, with this critical corridor grant program. So this is really the first run through of this. Staff attended, their webinar introducing the program and looking at the different facets of it very early in the fall, excuse me if I remember that correctly. And so they're very much the county was very much in a position where they wanted to get this program launched this year. It comes from new funding from their HRA levy, and they wanted, again, to introduce the program this year, but planned, because it has that sustained source of funding, to continue it and refine it in the coming years. But in this case, your staff report notes that the goals of the program are to boost connectivity between housing, jobs, and retail services and transportation, create a more compact and walkable environment, enhance pedestrian access and safety, and support vibrant business districts. Generally, the funds can be used to offset what is referred to in the grant program as extraordinary costs for housing, including activities such as demolition, site preparation, stormwater management, utilities and public improvements, and other such things such as sidewalks. Again, I mentioned that again, this is a new set of funding from the HRA levy. In this case, the applicant has chosen to seek these funds on their own, outside of, in relationship to their application with the city. But a requirement of their application is, again, local support from the local government, which is why the resolution is before you tonight. Another thing that was noted in the staff report before you is fully market rate applications aren't eligible for funding. So the applicant has sought to include some affordable housing to make them eligible to receive these funds. So staff is really, this application is between Schaefer Richardson and the county. So we've had very limited conversation with them about the amount of funding that they're seeking, how it will translate into affordable units, the length of that affordability term, what types of units, is this going to be 1-bedroom or 3-bedroom kinds of units? Staff had the opportunity to advise the applicant that they may receive some questions like that from the council tonight. So again, they're here in the audience to take any of your questions. Part of the challenge with this particular grant application and some of the information that's before you tonight is that this is actually also the application from Schaefer Richardson itself, and the other things that are part of the Critical Corridor Grant Program this first round are actually on the county's meeting for approval tonight. The applicant has advised us that they are also waiting to see the final results of the awards for their grant from the county as a result of their meeting tonight. But at the end of this information and analysis that we've kind of been talking about here, generally what the applicant asked for us was a resolution of support. That resolution of support does not tie the city to any additional funding of any kind for their project, and it does not change any of the land use approvals associated with that. So given those parameters, we felt it appropriate to bring you a resolution and recommend approval of it. And with that, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindahl. First question, so what is the upshot for Schaefer Richardson? Help me understand that, because it doesn't change the layout. The building effectively is going to be the same. They're still going to rent it to someone, but this grant provides a subsidy for what otherwise would have been a market rate. So again, what's the upshot for Schaefer Richardson?
Mayor, members of the council, I'll let the representative of Schaefer Richardson give you a more detailed answer, but from staff's perspective, the upshot would appear to be an additional source of funding for their development, which they in turn have now used as an opportunity to include affordable housing in their application or in their development.
Okay. So I'm still not clear if it helps them pay for the brick and mortar building to go up, or if it helps them offset future rents to be paid. So do you have an answer? And I can ask the project if that's easier.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff doesn't have a specific answer for you on that as it relates to kind of how this is penciling out in their pro forma. And I would believe that Mr. Orth will be able to give you more details about how it affects their specific financials.
Okay. I'd like to hear from Mr. Orth if you don't mind stepping up. I guess what I'd like to just hear is just give me your motivation behind doing this so that we're making a fully informed decision about what it is we're agreeing to support you guys in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Just to provide some background information for this particular program, it did come up later than we would have liked to in our timeline for the entire project. With that being said, though, it was our goal from the start to at least include some affordable elements to the project. It was never 100% affordable. I believe we were at 48 units before when we were requesting tax increment financing. The value for this, and it's actually it's a low interest loan as opposed to a grant, and I think that there were some options with the program, and the HRA opted for a loan instead of a grant. Our application included 10 units out of the total 244. So again, a very much smaller percentage of the building. The unit allocation, I think there was a question about that. There are no studios or alcoves that are included in this. Just as kind of a apples to apples from a percentage standpoint, we have 37% of the units in the building are 1-bedrooms, and about 2% of the units will be 50% of the area median income. The 2 bedrooms are at about 28%, and the affordable allocation would be 7%. And the 3 bedrooms, we have about 3% of those, and then that equals about a third of the affordable units. So it tiers up 2 1-bedrooms, 5 2-bedrooms, 3 3-bedrooms. So for 10 total. The question on what is it, I guess, on the return side from us, or what's the goal for doing it, is just to provide affordable housing. I think there are a lot of, there are members of the community that wanted this and were, I don't want to say upset, but maybe, I think that it was always our goal to have, mixed income and to be able to provide White Bear Lake with some of the affordable units that were identified in the comprehensive plan. Obviously, we're not anywhere close to where we were before. As a deferred loan, it's not something that we can take from, I guess, as an income. It's going to be a source used for the project for some of the items that staff had mentioned: stormwater, public or not, sidewalks, stormwater, site improvements. Again, it's a very small portion of the total construction costs, but when you include these, when you look at the reduction in rental income, it essentially reduces the amount of loan that we can get for the project. So that $1 million would cover the gap of what we would be able to get for a typical loan.
So help me understand that. So if you provided a certain percentage of the units at a lower rent, you're saying you wouldn't qualify for as much of a loan?
Correct.
And you're telling me that it's a total cost neutral. There's no financial upshot to say for Richardson for doing this?
It's the opposite. There's a slight reduction in our in the returns for the whole project.
So this loan then in providing affordable units is actually costing you money, and the project is less profitable for Schaefer Richardson?
That's correct.
Okay. I get from our standpoint, from a
Sure.
public policy standpoint, I'm still just trying to reconcile a for-profit organization. So it's your contention that you're doing this out of the kindness of your own heart?
I guess you could say that.
Okay. Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Orth, I'm not opposed to Barnum 2. I am curious, because this play is what makes you eligible to compete for lower cost capital. Is that correct? If you don't have any affordable buildings or affordable apartments in your complex, you are a full market rate and therefore not eligible for the program. Am I correct?
There needs to be an affordable element to qualify for the program, yes.
Okay. So now help me understand the exact, because I'm really curious how this program might work for other projects. So help me understand the mechanics. How much of a loan are you seeking from the county? I didn't find that in any of our materials.
It's $1 million.
Okay. And what's the interest rate savings that you might generate from the city compared to your other sources of capital?
Savings from the city?
No, from the county, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I said that, I was wrong. So what's the interest rate from the county money compared to your other sources of capital?
The interest rate for, again, it's
For the million, yeah, just for the,
between 1% to 2%.
that's really good money. So, so if you get $1 million to reduce your costs of, basically you get access to lower cost capital to do your project. And in exchange for that, you're going to take 10 units for what period of time and how much rent reduction per month or per year are you projecting for those?
The compliance period and length of affordability is 30 years.
30?
30.
Great.
Which
Okay.
is the same as the low-income housing tax credit program. We're not using that, but just as a comparison.
I'm sorry, keep going.
I think you had a second part of that question.
Yeah, so if I'm going to make up the numbers because I don't know.
Sure.
But let's say it's, because I can do this math in my head, if it's $1,000 a month as your standard, let's call it a one-bedroom rate, all right? How much would the lucky participant, the person who qualifies for the affordable one-bedroom, how much are they going to pay?
It's about a 45% decrease.
So about 450 rough numbers?
Rough number, on average, looks like, let's see here. For the entire project, the average market rate unit is about $1,750, and the average affordable unit would be $1,311. You were asking about one bedrooms in particular?
No, I was just trying to get my head inside how much less per month. So $300 a unit per month times 30 years times 10 units, ballpark, as one way of, and I could do that math, but I'm not going to do it at the moment. How does that compare to $1 million?
Over time, it will, again, it'll be a subordinate loan to our main permanent loan. It's going to, again, it'll decrease the cash flow. The good news is we can see what that impact is going to be in our projections. It is a, to Mr. Mayor's point, it is a reduction in returns, but it's one it's a palatable reduction. It's not too significant to where we wouldn't be considering this.
Okay. So just my quick numbers indeed support the idea that the total amount of savings to be, so Mr. Mayor, you asked about the implications for the city. I'm going to say, what are the implications for those residents who need housing? And it appears, rough numbers, 1.2 million in rent savings over 30 years on 10 units. If we're in again, all of this is back of the neck and kind of stuff, in exchange for getting access to $1 million of I'll call it very low interest finance. Okay? So I'm inclined to say that's reasonable and fair, that there's a net benefit to public financing, though this is kind of weird, folks, because it's the affordability that gets you access to the program at all. But I think I've got my answers. So do you know how this program might be used in other places? Have you, inside of your kind of the brainstorming and you guys deal with these kinds of questions all over the metro and other places. As you look at this, where else might this program have particular relevance, things that we might want to think about?
So I think we were eligible, our project was eligible because, again, they're the critical corridor. Yeah. County Road E, and I believe there was a revitalization effort going on with that. Yeah. Obviously, that helped our application. Mm-hmm. I think they may have been looking at some maps for the, other transit maps that may have been updated. But it's not just to staff's point, it's not just for affordable housing. In fact, that was one of three kind of main components that are eligible for the program. It's meant to foster inclusive economic development, including affordable housing, but there's also commercial corridor applications as well. It could be for public funds, infrastructure funds, and there are a lot of uses for this program. It is not just an affordable housing program. Our application just happened to score well in that category, and luckily some of the local efforts in revitalizing County Road E helped with our application.
Okay. Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I forgot your name.
Peter.
Peter, thank you. Sorry, I apologize for that. So I'm going to sum this up for the layman here. You guys get cheap money to help you build a project, and in exchange, you're going to provide affordable housing units, and at the end of the day, it's pretty much going to be a wash. You probably are going to take a bit of a loss, but over the time, you're willing to do that, and I know you guys came to the table with the affordable component. Can I just sum that up in 2 seconds and say yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't think it'll necessarily be a wash, but
Well, no,
net present value on that, yeah.
To us, but I mean, you guys, I heard you say that you would be on the negative end of that,
Yes,
okay?
that's true.
So, Mr. Lindahl, this is a brand-new program, and have you heard of anything going on, Dakota County, Hennepin County, anybody doing something like this, or other metro areas? This seems-
Mayor, members of the council, that's actually a really good question. The quick answer is no. This appears to be a fuller array of grant options that Ramsey County seems to be rolling out right now. Other counties, I've worked in both Dakota and Hennepin County communities, and there are certainly an array of grant programs available from the counties in those communities. They tend to focus more on site preparation and cleanup kind of things, transit-oriented development specifically, and supporting kind of active living and healthy development kinds of things. So I think my interpretation for you is that Ramsey County is attempting to expand their portfolio of grant opportunities for the communities that lie within Ramsey County, and they're just choosing to focus it in a little bit of different way. The extent of the program that was outlined at the introductory webinar that staff attended early last fall talked about this particular portion of the program, but also things that would be other portions are going to include the opportunities for kind of study supportive kind of thing. So if individual cities want to do planning and study kind of work for these critical corridor areas, focusing on economic development opportunities, I believe, again, was the focus there. Then there's this component, again, that's really targeted towards private developers, which Schaefer Richardson is taking advantage here. And then I believe the third component of it comes back to local government and can be used for kind of infrastructure and road improvement kind of thing. So,
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, to be honest, the list that he read off, I'm just like, well, all those, that, sidewalks, I'm like, yeah, that's the cost of doing business, demolition, hello, it's just like, okay. Then we got to all right, well, here's a way to get some affordable housing, and I support that. I think this is a good thing. I know from the onset that Schaefer Richardson was looking at that. And we're talking about, this is basically workforce development or workforce housing. And considering that 1 in 3 of our residents that live in our city and actually own homes qualify for this, I would move to approve for this agenda, or for this support of this resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I have one more question, though. So further discussion, me. What would you consider market rate for a project like this, or market interest rate on the cost to borrow the money?
Market interest rate?
Yeah.
I think, you look at the 10-year treasury and then usually you add a certain amount of basis points to the similar format. I think 6% right now for us would be good.
And what is the typical amortization schedule on a project like this?
30-year amortization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Councilmember Edberg.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Orth, if you'd stick around for just a moment. So if one assumes, I actually did do the math, that there's a $350 net reduction in rent. It makes the apartment affordable to those. Workforce is an accurate description. Folks making about $45,000 to $50,000 a year would theoretically qualify under this project. and the total cost of rent rebate, perhaps in the area of 1.6 million. I don't know that that's actually a benefit one way or the other. Apartments always have a vacancy rate of something, and so to the extent that we help them keep their buildings filled with a partial rent paying as opposed to a zero rent, there are some other benefits, but I think it's on balance a fair trade. Schaefer Richardson initiated the conversation. They should get credit for that. So, Mr. Orth, my question to you is, how will you actually physically implement the program of matching an eligible renter with one of those 10 units that you periodically will have in place? What's that process look like?
That's a great question. And to your point about the vacancy, none of the units are going to be any different in terms of cabinets, finishes, so they don't need to maintain any of them for that, to maintain that. So if there is, typically there's 5% vacancy on the market rate side. As leases turn over, there's always going to be that option to move, these specific units around within the floor plan. So that provides flexibility there.
But in terms of, so then going back to the other question, selecting the specific names who go on your renter rolls, how do folks apply and say, hey, I qualify for this? Or what's do you work with a public agency with trying to place families that meet particular income needs? Or what's the process that your management firm will use?
That's another good question. I think we're waiting to see from the county if there are specific resources that they would recommend or use for the program. Yep. From the private property manager standpoint, there's the same screening processes, which includes, looking at pay stubs, employment information, just to verify that they're within that threshold, and that they would continue to be within that threshold throughout their lease. It's just the same. Similar to a market rate unit of checking credit score, similar income limits, not income limits, income ratios to make sure they can pay for the unit, make payments.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of passing the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, the resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9, we have nothing scheduled. Item 10, communication from the city manager, Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I have a couple of upcoming events that public safety is hosting. So CERT, along with the police department, is having a food drive to support the area emergency food shelves. And so items requested are holiday baking ingredients. Drop-off is at the police department lobby, and they can do that Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, December 2nd, 3rd, or 4th from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. On Sunday, 11 to 3. And Santa will be visiting on Saturday from 1 to 4. And then second, we have fire safety with Santa. So this does require signing up to visit Santa at the fire station, at the South Fire Station on Sunday, December 11th from 12 to 2:30 p.m. Time slots are limited. Santa's very popular. So we're requesting that people reserve a time by contacting Assistant Chief Friesen. And then we are holding holiday light recycling, so you can drop off unwanted or unusable string lights at City Hall now through January 13th. Question for the City Council, we do need to have an HRA. Can you please go back? Okay, question for the City Council. We do need to have an HRA meeting on December 13th. Is the HRA board available at 6:30 p.m. that evening? It would just be before our regular council meeting at 7. So nodding yes? Okay, thank you. And then lastly, the mayor attended the Citizens Police Academy. I don't know if you want to talk. We do have a video of him volunteering for us.
I'd rather not do it, I'm sorry, the HRA meeting that night.
Oh. I have.
But I really would like to see the mayor get tased.
Well, hang on a second. Just, are we doing the HRA meeting on?
Yeah.
Sorry, just so you know, Mr. Mayor, your daughter has a Christmas concert that evening.
Which I will be attending because I am not on the HRA. But yes, we would want to accommodate, so maybe we'll have to circle back on the
Could we,
scheduling of that.
let's do it now, everyone's
Okay,
here. Could we
okay.
have the HRA meeting immediately following the city council meeting?
Yes, says your chair.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, that's okay. Go ahead, Mayor.
All right.
We'll hit play whenever you're
wow.
ready.
Go ahead, hit play. Let's show everybody.
I gotta make one comment, because unless you have the picture of your T-shirt.
No.
No, we don't want to show anything
I'm
gruesome.
showing kudos to seeing how far those were spread out, and I'm assuming those officers held you.
Well, let's play the video and let's see what
Stop.
happened. And then I'll offer comment and commentary.
Play by play.
Like
Sorry, I'm looking for the
hover
place.
over the,
Taser, taser, taser.
Clearly resistant.
it was a very good.
No, that video doesn't do it justice. It really, really, really hurt. I've broken my femur, an ankle, wrists, lots of broken bones. That was by far the most painful thing I've ever experienced. And you are debilitated for 5 seconds. You can't breathe, so it feels like the wind is knocked out of you. So it's no joke. It is also an incredibly useful tool for our law enforcement to be able to have a non-deadly use of force that actually does just stop a suspect or perpetrator in their tracks. You cannot move. The one thing that you kind of find out about after the fact is the barbs go in about a half an inch, and they have little tentacles on them so that they don't pull out. So to get those out, you got to kind of give them a bit of a yank. So there's a couple wounds on my back still that will heal in time, I'm sure. But it's something that is worth doing once, and I never want to do it again, voluntarily or involuntarily. And but yeah, I want to extend my compliments to all the officers, specifically the sergeants that participate in the Citizens Police Academy. In talking to the dozen or so folks that have done it in this class, it really does give you a flavor of what our officers do day in and day out. It's a tough job, a dangerous job. So I think the more citizens really understand what police officers go through on a day in and day out basis, and then spread what they learn back into the community, we're all benefactors of that. So I was happy to be the guinea pig and give the audience a little bit of a thrill that night. And with that, I'm done talking about being tasered. So thank you.
I have nothing else.
All right, thank you. All right, anybody have any questions for Ms. Crawford? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Have a good night.
Yeah.